On the outside, he was the guy who had it all. The killer career, the confident smile, the unwavering strength everyone learned to rely on. He was the rock, the provider, the one who always had the answers. He was, for all intents and purposes, the perfect man. But what nobody saw, what nobody could even guess, was the man behind the mask. The man who was silently falling apart, crushed by the weight of his own performance. This is the story of that performance, the devastating cost it demanded, and the day he finally decided to take the mask off. It starts early, doesn't it? The training. It's subtle, woven right into our childhood. A scraped knee on the playground is met with a quick, firm, "You're okay, shake it off. Big boys don't cry." A moment of fear gets dismissed with, "You need to be tough. You need to man up." These aren't just words. They're instructions. They are the first threads of the mask that society starts handing us, piece by piece. We're taught, almost from birth, that certain emotions are off limits. Fear, sadness, confusion, and especially vulnerability. These are signs of weakness, and they don't fit the masculine ideal. So, we learn to hide them. We learn to perform. For me, the performance started as a survival tactic in the brutal arena of the middle school hallway. I learned fast that the quiet, sensitive kid was an easy target. The solution? A mask. I started with the Joker mask, using humor to deflect from any real emotion. If I was always laughing, always ready with a comeback, no one could get close enough to see the insecurity I felt. And it worked. The jokes became my armor. As I got older, the masks got more sophisticated, more necessary. In college and my early career, I upgraded to the know-it-all mask and the stoic mask. I believed that to be respected, to be seen as a man of value, I had to project total confidence and emotional control. I'd sit in meetings, my stomach churning with anxiety, but on the surface, I was the picture of calm. I'd offer opinions with a certainty I didn't feel, burying my self-doubt under layers of fake expertise. The stoicism was the most valuable. I treated my emotions like a private, shameful secret. When a long-term relationship ended in my mid-20s, I told my friends I was fine, that it was for the best. I went to work the next day and acted like nothing happened. Inside, I was a wreck, but the mask of the unshakable man stayed perfectly in place. Strength and stoicism were the currency of manhood, and I was determined to be rich. This performance was rewarded. I got the promotions. I was seen as reliable, a leader, someone who could handle pressure. My entire identity got tied up with my ability to achieve and to endure. This led me to the material mask. I started measuring my self-worth not by my character or relationships, but by the title on my business card, the car I drove, the money in my bank. These external things were proof of my manhood. They were easy to show people, so much easier than showing what was really going on inside. I was building a fortress around myself, brick by brick, success by success. But I was also building a prison. These masks, designed to get by in the world, were becoming my identity. I was so busy playing the part of the man I thought I was supposed to be, I was losing who I actually was. The performance took over everything. It dictated how I talked with my friends, my family, my partners. With friends, conversations stayed in the shallow end. We'd talk about sports, work, politics, anything but our actual lives. There was this unspoken code of silence, a mutual agreement to never get into feelings. We were all wearing the same masks, just nodding at each other in our shared, silent performance. In romantic relationships, the mask was a disaster. It makes true intimacy impossible. How can someone love you for who you are if you never show them? Every time I felt an emotion, it felt like a risk. Every time I needed reassurance, it felt like admitting weakness. The mask of masculine strength demands invincibility, and invincibility is a lonely place to live. I was the alpha, the one in control, but I was emotionally bankrupt. For years, I thought the performance was worth it. The external validation feels good for a while. But the weight of these masks, it adds up. It gets heavier every year, with every tear you swallow, with every fear you don't speak. Eventually, the cracks start to show. The first cost I truly understood was the terrifying impact it had on my mental health. Living a lie is exhausting. The gap between how I felt on the inside and how I acted on the outside created this low-grade, humming anxiety that became the soundtrack to my life. I was always on edge, just waiting to be exposed as a fraud. And suppressing emotions doesn't make them disappear. It just forces them to curdle inside. My suppressed sadness and anxiety mutated into a constant frustration and a short temper. Tiny problems at work would send a jolt of rage through me. I was becoming a stranger to myself, unable to manage feelings I refused to even admit I had. That toxic pool of emotion eventually overflowed into full-blown depression and anxiety. There were nights I'd lie awake staring at the ceiling, heart pounding for no reason, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. I'd be at my desk, looking at a spreadsheet, and suddenly feel a wave of despair so heavy it felt like I was drowning. But the mask of stoicism had a firm grip. The script I had learned told me that seeking help was the ultimate failure. The idea of therapy felt like admitting defeat. It was a sign of weakness, and weakness wasn't an option. So I suffered in silence, which only made it worse, creating a feedback loop of pain and isolation. The loneliness was maybe the most crushing weight of all. On paper, I was surrounded by people, friends, colleagues, family. But in reality, I had never felt more alone. The masks kept everyone at a distance. The connections I had were superficial because they were with a character I was playing, not the real me. I desperately wanted a friendship where I could just say, "Man, I'm not okay today." But the words wouldn't come out. That code of silence with my male friends meant we were all suffering in our own private prisons, never sharing the keys. This lack of real connection is directly linked to higher rates of depression, and I was living proof. My relationships were a direct casualty. The mask that blocks emotions makes deep connection impossible. I remember a partner once telling me, through her own tears, "I feel like I don't even know you. It's like trying to hug a statue." She was right. I offered solutions instead of empathy. I offered stoic silence instead of shared vulnerability. I thought I was being the strong, stable partner she needed. But what I was actually being was absent, emotionally unavailable. The very mask I wore to seem strong was poisoning my ability to love and be loved. It wasn't a shield, it was a wall. And then, the identity crisis. My entire sense of self was built on achievements. I was my job title. I was my salary. I was my success. So when those things faltered, as they always do, I completely fell apart. I remember missing out on a huge promotion I'd worked tirelessly for. To the outside world, I shrugged it off. I took the team out for drinks and made jokes. But that night, alone in my apartment, I felt a sense of worthlessness that was absolute. If I wasn't the successful guy, who was I? The masks teach us our worth is in our power or our possessions. When those are threatened, our identity feels like it's being erased. I had no internal sense of self to fall back on. I was just a collection of masks, and underneath them, I was starting to feel like there was nothing left at all. The breaking point wasn't a big, dramatic explosion. It was a quiet internal collapse. It happened on a Tuesday. I was in my late 30s. I had just landed the biggest client of my career, closing a deal people said was impossible. My boss paraded me around the office. Congratulatory emails flooded my inbox. This was it. The peak of the performance. This should have been the moment that made all the sacrifice, all the suppressed pain, all the lonely nights worth it. I went home, opened a bottle of expensive champagne, and poured a glass. I stood in the middle of my perfectly designed apartment, surrounded by the evidence of my success, and I felt nothing. Absolutely nothing. No joy, no pride, just a vast, hollow emptiness. The silence in that room was deafening, and in that moment, the performance just stopped. All the masks, the stoic, the joker, the know-it-all, they all fell away. And I saw myself for what I was, a scared, lonely man who had spent his life chasing a version of success that left him spiritually bankrupt. The weight became unbearable. I just sank to the floor And for the first time since I was a little boy, I cried. Not a few tears. It was a complete, shattering breakdown. Sobs that came from a place so deep inside me, I didn't know it existed. It was decades of unspoken fear, grief, and loneliness pouring out. It was the sound of a man breaking, but it was also the sound of a prison wall starting to crumble. Lying on the floor that night, I knew I couldn't go on like this. The performance was killing me. The mask had to come off. And I know I am not the only one who has felt this way. I know there are men out there right now, feeling that same hollowness, buckling under the weight of the mask they feel like they have to wear every single day. If this story, if any part of this resonates with you, if you've ever felt trapped behind that mask, just take a second to subscribe. It's a quiet way of raising your hand and saying, I get it. It lets me know, and it lets everyone else watching know, that we are not alone in this. The morning after was terrifying. Taking off the mask isn't a single brave act. It's the start of a long, clumsy, and often painful process. It's like learning to walk again. My first step, the hardest one I've ever taken, was picking up the phone and making an appointment with a therapist. Every part of me screamed against it. The voice in my head, the one that sounded like every coach and societal message I'd ever heard, told me it was weak, that I should handle this on my own. Walking into that first therapy session felt like a public announcement of my failure as a man. I sat there for the first 20 minutes in silence. The therapist just waited. When I finally started talking, the words were a jumbled mess. I was so out of practice at saying how I felt, it was like trying to speak a foreign language. I'd say, I feel unfrustrated, when I really meant, I feel heartbroken. But slowly, session by session, I started to find the words. I began to map out my own inner world, a world I had ignored my entire life. The next step was to try being vulnerable with people in my life. This was even scarier than therapy. I decided to start with my oldest friend. We were grabbing a beer, going through the usual script, work, sports, the same dance we'd done for 20 years. My heart was pounding. I took a breath and just said it. Man, I've been having a really hard time lately, feeling pretty depressed. The silence that followed felt like an eternity. I braced myself for the joke, the deflection, the awkward change of subject. But it never came. He just looked at me, his own mask flickering for a second, and said, "Me too. I'm so glad you said that. I thought I was the only one." That was the moment I truly got it. Me being vulnerable didn't push him away. It gave him permission to be vulnerable too. It deepened our friendship more in those 5 minutes than 20 years of surface-level talk ever could have. It turns out the fear of judgment is often a monster we create in our own heads. True strength isn't about being a fortress. It's about having the courage to lower the drawbridge and let someone in. This journey wasn't a straight line. There were days I put the mask right back on. In moments of conflict, my old programming would kick in and I'd retreat into stoic silence. It was a constant process of unlearning decades of bad conditioning. It was learning to sit with uncomfortable emotions instead of trying to fix or hide them. It was learning that my worth wasn't tied to my paycheck. It was just there. It was learning to be kind to myself, to treat myself with the same compassion I'd give a friend. It was a slow, deliberate rebuilding of my entire definition of what it means to be a man. Living without the mask feels like breathing fresh air after a lifetime in a stuffy room. It doesn't mean life is perfect. I still feel sadness, fear, and anxiety. But I no longer see those emotions as the enemy. They're just part of being human, messengers telling me something important. My relationships have seen the biggest change. My friendships are deeper than I ever thought possible. We talk about our struggles, our fears, our wins. We're there for each other in a way that goes way beyond a pat on the back. In my romantic relationship, intimacy is no longer a performance. It's a real connection built on honesty. Being able to say, "I'm scared" or "I need your help" isn't a sign of weakness. It's the foundation of trust. It's the ultimate act of love, showing someone your complete self and trusting them to handle it with care. My sense of self-worth is no longer tied to the roller coaster of external validation. It's rooted in something much more stable. My character, my values, my ability to be a good friend and an honest person. I'm still ambitious, but it's different. I'm no longer chasing success to prove my worth to the world. I'm pursuing a life that feels meaningful on the inside, not just one that looks good on the outside. Redefining masculinity for myself has meant embracing a new kind of strength. Not the brittle strength of stoicism that shatters under pressure, but the resilient strength of vulnerability. It's the courage to be seen, the courage to be honest, the courage to ask for help. It's knowing that real confidence isn't pretending you have all the answers. It's being secure enough to say, I don't know, but I'm willing to find out. It's a masculinity defined not by dominance, but by connection, compassion, and emotional intelligence. The mask of masculinity is a heavy burden that society asks too many of us to carry. It promises strength, but delivers isolation. It promises respect, but creates fear. It forces millions of men to suffer in silence, leading to devastating consequences for their mental health, their relationships, and their souls. My story isn't unique. It's the story of countless fathers, brothers, sons, and friends who are performing a role that is slowly breaking them. But it doesn't have to be this way. We can change the script. We can create a new definition of masculinity, one that celebrates emotional honesty as a cornerstone of true strength. It starts with us. It starts with the courage to have these conversations. It starts with creating a culture where it's not just okay, but encouraged, for men to speak their truth and ask for help. Taking off the mask is the hardest and most important work I have ever done. It's a journey from a life that looked good to a life that feels good. It's the journey back to yourself. So, I have two things to ask of you. First, if you're a man struggling under the weight of your own mask, please know you are not alone. Your struggle is real, and it is not a sign of weakness. Reaching out is the bravest thing you can possibly do. And second, for everyone watching, do something simple but profound. The next time you ask someone, especially a man in your life, "How are you doing?" really ask him. Pause, look him in the eyes, and wait for the real answer. That simple question, asked with genuine care, could be the invitation he's been waiting for to finally set the mask aside. It could be the question that saves a life. Share your own stories in the comments. Let's create a space where we can have this conversation openly. Let's start a revolution of unmasking together. Thank you for listening.